part of me, so deep in my heart, you're really a part of me. I've got you under my skin. I've tried so not to give in. I say to myself, this affair never could go so well. But why should I try to resist when, darling, I know so well I've got you under my skin.
My grandma and my grandfather were born in Chicago. And Grandma was born in Chicago. I was born in Chicago. And all the kids were born in Chicago. So we go back a ways as far as Chicagoans are concerned. Grandma had 4 sisters, and she's the oldest of 4 sisters. My grandfather was a lawyer. All the girls worked for him at one time or another when they first started out. My grandfather's idea of an education was, you go to grammar school, then I send you to business school, then you're on your own. And Grandma was on her own at an early age. And wherever she worked, they were crazy about her. I didn't realize it when I was a kid, but she was one of the original women livers. She was one of the first women to drive. She always did different things, like being a handicapper of horses. I mean, whoever heard of a woman doing that? I remember I used to go out with Gram and Gramps when they used to make their deliveries to the bookies. And I used to fall asleep in the back of the car at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were out making these handicap sheet deliveries. I know everybody's heard the story about how she picked all the winners the first time she ever did it. She was an example for me. She picked herself up by her bootstraps, and she did what she had to do. And Grandpa was the same way. Grandpa's father came originally I think from Russia. He went to England all by himself as a little boy. He came from, I think lived there for a while, and then came here by himself. Grandpa's got 2 brothers and a sister. Sister Hazel, his brother Leslie, and his brother Howard. My earliest memories of Gramps are looking up and not being able to see his face because he looked so big to me. He was so tall, the sun was shining behind him, and he was just so big. When Gramps was in New York, he went for an audition for a show, Firebrand of Florence. And they were so impressed with Grandpa that they made a part for him in the show. And they made him the understudy to the star. He was on TV with Jimmy Durante. Gramps traveled with the ice show for a long time, traveled around with these different shows for state fairs. He was even in one with Burt Lancaster when he wasn't even a star yet. He was a trapeze artist. He was just outstanding. Everybody thought his voice and his looks and everything were just outstanding. He's just done a lot as far as show business is concerned. He's been in the opera, and then he decided to study to be a cantor. No matter what Grandpa decided to do, he did it well. He put all his efforts into it, even now with the orange groves. I mean, he knows all there is to know about oranges.
My earliest memories of Gram and Gramps. I can remember back to the days of their furniture store in Chicago. And Ray and I used to run around in the show windows, and they would always get after us to get out of the window because they were trying to show their furniture to the public.
And here they were running the store, and they got 2 kids to look after. She talks about it now. She'd say, she always brings it up, how I used to drop them off and go bowling. Grandma was a bookkeeper at the furniture store. She kept the books. She, as usual, Grandma kept the reins on the purse strings. And Grandpa was the idea man, more or less, I guess, the one up in front. Grandpa had some terrific ideas. Some of his window things that he put in were outstanding. People used to come. In fact, I think there's even pictures of it in the newspapers.
I was too young to remember much about the days in Chicago, but I do have some vivid memories of the early days here in Florida with my grandparents. Specifically, I remember my mother used to bring me over to Graham and Gramps' house. She'd carry me over to that side screen door, and my grandmother would come out on the patio, and every time she'd see me, she'd make a big fuss. "Look who's here!" And she'd carry on, and I knew every time we were going to come over, she was going to do the same thing, and those were some fond memories. She still does that, but it's not because of me. It's usually because I'm carrying the newest member of the family, so I've been upstaged a bit, but I guess that's fair enough.
I remember many times the family over at Graham and Gramps' house and swimming in the pool, diving in the pool and swimming around. Mom would be swimming, and Ray and I don't know what Matt was doing. He was probably out in the yard walking or doing something, but we would play in the pool and just really have a good time. It was always fun to have the family together over at Graham and Gramps. Now that I have my own pool, I know what a tough job it is to keep a pool looking blue. And Gramps, thanks for teaching me.
I have a lot of fond memories of Grandpa. I do remember things like he'd take me on his errands in the car, and we'd play pilot and co-pilot all the time. The actor in him made him a real fun playmate, and usually a real silly one, too. We'd spend a lot of time in the garage. He'd be working on his clay or some type of project, and he just loved to talk nonsense to me while he was working on something. He'd call me Max. Nobody to this day knows where the name Max came from, but he still calls me Max. He'd say, "Max, watch me, Max, because the more you watch, the less you'll see." And that generally turned out to be the case.
I remember sometimes when he did the clay act on Miami Beach in the various hotels. And I remember even helping them a couple of times, how Gramps would park the car and schlep all the equipment, and Gram would be there carrying a bucket of clay.
I think if you ask him if he'd rather sing than be a comedian, I think he'd say he'd rather be a comedian. Grandpa's well known for his corny jokes.
Once I went to see Gramps in a play with Milton Berle. And after the play was over, he took me backstage to meet Uncle Milty. He knocked on the door, and there was Milton Berle standing there in his boxer shorts and this white, sleeveless, Italian immigrant type t-shirt. Well, that kind of left me speechless. I wasn't expecting to meet Mr. Television in his underwear. So I kind of clammed up, and Milton was asking me all these kind of questions, and I just didn't say a word. To this day, my grandfather teases me about that.
We could always count on them to have something different. I remember they had monkeys, they had a parakeet that used to talk and do tricks.
On one of their trips to Mexico, they saw these Mexican burros, and talking about people doing things different all the time, they brought one of the burros back to Chicago.
We came over to visit them one day, and they had this burro walking around in the backyard. And we couldn't believe it. And Ray and I took rides on this burro.
Grandma was a real boys kind of grandmother because, well, for one thing, she liked all kinds of animals. She had a real fondness for them, and she wasn't afraid of bugs. Mice was a different story, but bugs she wasn't afraid of. In fact, I remember I must have been 9 or 10, and I was out in her yard, and I had a jar, and I was catching grasshoppers. Well, she came out and actually helped me catch the grasshoppers. I don't know if she remembers this or not, but we must have caught about 50 of them. And I think she just had as much fun as I did.
It's always such a wonderful feeling during the holidays. Hanukkah, Passover particularly, when we're all sitting around the table and Gramps is conducting the Seder, and Grandma is helping him find his place in the Haggadah. The tradition that Grandma and Gramps have taught us about Judaism. Yeah, I think that's the thing I'll always remember most about my grandparents.
When you went out with my grandparents, you either bumped into somebody he married or somebody he bar mitzvahed, or both. And of course the same went for most of the family, including these stunning newlyweds here. They later went on to produce this gorgeous little creature, Kayla, and then later Lamont and Wayne. But Gramps also, he married the three of us boys, bar mitzvahed us as well.
They're a great couple. We talk about marriages, people being made for each other. They are. They're the kind of people that once they make friends, they're friends for life. They're very sincere and very interested in everybody. And they care. I suppose it's superfluous to say that they care for one another, but they really do. And you can't help but see it when you're around them. They're certainly very devoted to their family.
One particular time it really made me proud to be with them and have them as my grandparents is when I graduated from law school. They threw a party for my graduation just prior to the graduation ceremonies at their house. What made me feel real good is that Grandma's father was an attorney, so I was becoming an attorney just like her father had. And I just knew that I could help them with legal matters, and yeah, they gave me plenty of legal business, I'll tell you. I mean, my first few years was handling all family matters. Didn't make much money, but I sure helped the family out a lot.
I have one more story. My grandfather loves to tell this story. Apparently this happened when I was this age here, and I'd like to set the record straight. I was at the airport in Chicago. We must have come back from somewhere, and I was all bundled up, and he came to greet me, and he stuck his face down there to say hi, and I was in a bad mood, and I said, quote, "Reeve me alone." Well, I'd like to finally officially apologize. I didn't mean it. I'm glad you didn't reeve me alone.
And I'm wishing my grandparents, their great-grandparents, a happy anniversary, and thank you very much, and my mother too, for bringing me up so that I could have the opportunity to raise two on my very own. I love you. Bye-bye.
Do you think Grandma and Grandpa are funny?
Yeah.
Do you think Grandma and Grandpa are fun to play with?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for her, Daddy?
Do you love Grandma and Grandpa?
Yeah.
You want to throw Grandma and Grandpa a big kiss? Can you throw...
Blow kiss?
Blow kiss?